what intergenerational transmission is that the demographic behavior of the parents is reproduced by the children. For instance, the kind of questions I look at is if someone has had gave birth as a teenager, whether the chances that his or her daughter also gives birth as a teenager, has a teenage birth, is higher or not. Or, to give another example, if your parents have divorced, are the chances higher that you yourself will divorce as well? If that is the case, then we talk about intergenerational transmission of demographic behavior. And these are just two examples. You could also think of transmission of, for instance, the number of children people have. So do parents, do children who come from a large family have a higher chance of having a large family themselves as well? Yes, they do, and in a sense that's remarkable, because the transition to adulthood nowadays is so much different for young people than it was for their parents, let's say in the 1960s or 1970s. Now people are cohabiting, which was very uncommon at that time. People are having children outside of marriage, which was also very uncommon at the time. But still we see that there is a kind of resemblance between the way parents experience these events and young people experience these events. It's not a simple thing with just one explanation. I think 3 or maybe even 4 different explanations are important. First of all, people grow up in a family and take over the ideas and attitudes of people from that family. So if your parents liked a large family, the chances that you will be in favor of a large family simply is higher because you take over the ideas of your parents in that respect. So that's a kind of socialization effect, you could say. The second thing, and this is a thing that is particularly important for divorce, is that children from divorced families often have not learned the skills that you need to keep your relationship going and to manage potential conflicts. So what you usually see is that if someone comes from a broken family, they say, well, I will never, I will avoid experiencing the same thing. But what you see in reality is that although they don't want to divorce, they end up being divorced because they haven't learned in the parental home how you deal with conflicts within your relationship. So that's the second reason. The third reason has to do with the fact that many demographic events that have negative consequences for people, like divorce, that has a negative influence on your well-being, like early parenthood, like lone motherhood, are experienced by people who have lived in poverty. So the parents have grown up in poverty, have made demographic decisions that probably weren't always the most wise decisions that they could take. But as a result, the child also grows up in poverty and kind of replicates the behavior of the parents. Basically, you could say that the same kind of processes work for all kind of families and for all kind of people. So it's not like that it's so much stronger in one group than in the other. At the same time, you could say those groups where, for instance, it's difficult to escape a poor family situation. So a family where in poverty, where there are little possibilities to increase your educational attainment. For these kind of families, it's harder. So that these are the families in poverty. Another thing is if you are part of a family, for instance, with very strong normative ideas about how you should behave, then it will also be more difficult to behave in contrast to these expectations. So that is a reason why, for instance, children from migrant families still very often cling to the behavioral patterns that were common among their parents or among compatriots in the country of origin. First of all, it's important to emphasize that intergenerational transmission of demographic behaviors is not necessarily a bad thing. If parents have made demographic decisions that are positive, then it's a good thing that children reproduce the same kind of behaviors. I think where it might become problematic is when demographic behaviors that have negative consequences are passed on from parents to children, like teenage parenthood, like lone motherhood, like divorce. And on these elements, policy might play a role. But my feeling would be that the kind of policies that do matter are more general policies, like policies that combat poverty among people. Because if the next generation is able to escape poverty, if the next generation is able to increase their educational attainment, the chances that they will reproduce the mistakes of their parents become a lot less. So I think that's the most important thing.